Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Permaconn PM54 webinar. As usual, my name is Thomas Robles. I'll be your handsome host today. With me is Luke Casey from Viasec.
Good morning, everyone.
We're discussing PM54 with the CCTV systems and how do we connect to those via apps, P2P, and DDNS. Then Luke will go into how to connect the Check My CCTV service through the PM54 to your cameras. So let's get the ball rolling. As usual, as you have questions come up, please type them in. We'll answer them at the end of the session. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. So PM54, connecting it remotely to a camera system, whether the case is IT problems, getting a connection out, whether you're in a place with no infrastructure, whatever your case may be, we have the solution. Here we have the new PM54 version 2. So from version 1 was a Cat M1 router. Version 2 is a Cat 4 router. I know we'll cover some ground we've covered in past webinars, but yeah, please bear with me. So version 2 Cat 4 router. So instead of the 10 down, 55 up, we now have 100 down, 50 up. So a massive expansion in your bandwidth. Just for this one, we do have this unit currently in router only mode, but inside of alarm communication mode, you can also do the same functionality if you have an alarm panel or access control system on site. So let's jump straight into it. One thing I will mention, because as we were having a bit of a play yesterday on setup, that we chewed up a fair bit of bandwidth. So if you can see here, we have data usage alerts. So at 80, 95, 100%, Atlas will generate a contact ID to the control room and an email to the bureau admin for each profile, alerting them that you've reached 80% of usage, 95%, 100%. As you can see here, we do have a unique contact ID event for each one. So keeping you well informed so you can top up if and when necessary. Straight into the magic, our opening dashboard. Here I've set this one up already. So with to get a DDNS on a PM54, all you have to do is throw in a Telstra data pack 1 gig or more, give the great guys at Tech Services a ring. Less than 5 minutes, 2 minutes, we do work the magic in the background and drop a DDNS in there for free. As you can see here, this IP address is the roaming IP address of the SIM card, but we've got a fixed DDNS sitting under that. Other useful things inside the dashboard are active clients. So I've got, obviously, LAN 1 is connected to an NVR, LAN 2 was connected to a laptop. So if I've got a problem with the system, I can always check what's connected. NVR is online, laptop's obviously not connected, therefore offline. And as I said before, if these are disconnected, they will also generate their own unique contact ID events as seen here. So if you do have a failure, whether it's an NVR is blown up or access control system blown up and it's offline, that'll come up with a disconnect. Or if it's physically been disconnected, also the same. Straight into the internet. So I will mention this one for everyone out there. For the top-ups as we were discussing and these usage alerts, for the monitoring stations and for the bureaus that have been, their monitoring stations have given them data management rights, this is how you would top up when you get those alerts. So you have a couple options here. Coming in here, you can see that I used up one gig yesterday, so I've topped it up with another gig. So you can either do a top up, which is a one-off pack. Same charges as usual pack, but it's a one-off. It doesn't roll over into the next month with more charges. So it's just one-off top up for that month. The other option is if you know this is becoming a consistent thing, you can always just up the data pack altogether. And here, finally, we have the dynamic DNS. We can disable it, we can update it, we can change it, but that's where we do that in the Tech Services. Lastly, port forwarding. Here's some dummy port forwards I've done just for this test. Port forwarding is much the same as any router, so there's nothing really special to it. Just do what you're already used to doing. And add them, but when you do add them, you will be asked to reset the Permaconn. Just click it, reset, 2 seconds. It just keeps everything saved in the history in case something does happen. Now, like I said, we are going to show you the connectivity to to a Hikvision NVR as an example, but most NVRs and most camera brands out there are much the same. So no matter what you're using, you guys know it's going to be the same logical process. Here, this one is connected to Hikvision NVR, and it's also connected using the Check My CCTV service. You can actually see the port forwards IPs here for Check My CCTV, and also down the bottom is the application for Check My CCTV, and which Luke will go into after I'm finished. So let's jump straight into the NVR. Open my Windows Internet Explorer. I thought this was dead long ago, but hey, it sticks around like a bad rash. So we log in, admin. So as many of you probably already know, the main advantage of this kind of access over an app is the ability to remotely configure a system. Because the apps don't usually allow you to configure. There's Luke. You don't have that ability to configure the systems like with the apps. So this is great for when you have those remote sites. Deploy cameras, especially. I've had a good couple of cases where guys are sending text to sites to make some minor configurations, but they're having to go up a pole, forklift, scissor lift, and spending time and money when they could have done with this solution. They're doing it remotely from their office. Hey, it's COVID safe for everyone. So you see, full access, not a problem in the world, ticking over beautifully, and we even have the live view. Next, we will go into, and we'll kill that one. Next, we will go into the app functionality. Let me bring that up. So, app functionality, I'll close that one. Hikvision app, open that one up. Here we go again. There's Luke. So we have that full functionality through the PM54 for you, your customers, everybody. So there's not much this little baby can't do. So a lot of the cases we see with this, like I said, there's cases deploy cameras in the middle of nowhere, solar panels, stratas. I know a lot of you guys out there who deal with stratas. There's no one monitoring them. There's not even a monitor on site connected to the system. It's just an NVR sitting in a rack somewhere or a riser. And who knows what's happening with that NVR, with that system until something goes wrong and you're rolling into site and half the cameras are down. And what's the one we've all dealt with? IT systems and specialists in corporate networks who will not let you touch anything or even let you have a port forward out. So yeah, this is to solve all those pain points and to make you and your techs so much more efficient in what you do, saving you money and meaning you can make money elsewhere instead of having to do average maintenance where you can just do it all remotely through one reliable connection. So from there, I'll hand over to Luke. Luke, if start the ball roll.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for this session. What I'd like to do today is run you through just a couple of quick slides to explain what Check My CCTV is for those who haven't looked at the product before. And then we'll go through actually adding a site through the Atlas portal for the PM54 and then into Check My CCTV to have a look at how that actually works itself. So Check My CCTV is proactive maintenance monitoring. It allows you to monitor all of your clients' CCTV systems 24/7 to ensure that as soon as a fault occurs, whether it's a camera failure, a hard drive failure, date and time accuracy has crept out, then all of those alerts are going to be sent through either to your central station for actioning or directly to your service scheduling team. So you can have a tech out there as soon as possible. What Check My CCTV does is replace traditional maintenance. It allows you to be aware as soon as a fault has occurred. It allows minimum downtime for those systems that do actually have fault occur. So as you can see with traditional maintenance, fault occurs until the client recognises that there is an issue or you happen to come up to your scheduled site visit, someone could completely miss that system is not working. With Check My CCTV, it allows you to be aware as soon as the system has failed, you receive those notifications and you can immediately contact the client proactively and let them know there's a fault and that you're there ready to rectify that issue for them. We do have a couple of nice features like our web viewer, which allows you to see all of the live information in your smartphone or tablet as well. This is a great tool which you can share with the client as well. So if they have IT staff who would like to have visibility on what's happening with their systems, you can give them this web viewer and they can't break it. Basically, it is read-only for this particular application, so they can see the information and they can't change anything and stop it from working. Check My CCTV, is highly compatible with a broad range of systems, and we're constantly adding new brands to that compatibility list. This year alone, we've added Axis, Mobotics, and a number of other brands that people have been asking for. So as we go along, we do constantly add new brands. So if you have projects out there with brands that aren't currently supported on our compatibility sheet, please do get in touch, and we're more than happy to speak to those manufacturers and try and add that compatibility for you as well. What I'll do, I won't go in too much detail. We do have a separate webinar that covers all of the Check My CCTV details for sales and how you can present that to your clients. What we'll do now is go into the PM54 application of Check My CCTV. Now, when adding a new site for Check My CCTV with a PM54, first thing we need to do is activate the PM54. Now, just so that you're aware, with Check My CCTV, you do have two different options on how to report those alerts. You can have them done through your central station, or you can actually monitor them internally within your business, in your service department, or directly through to your email account. Now, if you are going to monitor them yourself or internally, you do just need to add the Check My CCTV central station up here in your central stations tab. So once you've selected the Check My CCTV central station, all of those signals will just stay internal. They won't head out to your central station. Now we click on the activate button, same as we do with all of our devices. And we're taken to the first screen here for activation. Now, just to clarify a couple of things for you, so you can see here your usage mode choices. So you can choose between alarm communicator, router, or IP alarm panel. Now, we talk about those alerts and alarms coming out of Check My CCTV for you to monitor. That doesn't mean you need to have that alarm communicator as the usage mode. Now, we use the router side of the PM54 for the Check My CCTV service. So if you don't have an alarm panel on site and you're only using the PM54 just for the CCTV, then we only need to select the router mode. And you'll see the difference is alarm communicator mode, we have to choose a pole plan here. And that's purely for your alarm panel. That's not for Check My CCTV. So all we need is that router mode. Now, under the data packs, you'll see we've got the choice of Optus or Telstra data plans. Now, Telstra, we do get a dynamic IP address, and as Thomas was discussing earlier, we get DDMS attached to that so that we can communicate with any devices we have connected. With the Optus plans, we do have the choice of a larger data pack with Optus, but you do need to contact the team at Permaconn and they will enable a VPN on that PM54. So only the Telstra plans are able to do the dynamic DNS. If you would like to use one of the Optus plans for a larger data pack, as I said, contact the team, they'll activate a VPN on that service and you'll be able to communicate with those devices exactly the same. So for this example, we'll just go with a 1 gig Telstra plan. We need to make sure that we tick the Check My CCTV service. As you can see here, the central station, we're monitoring this one internally. So we've selected the Check My CCTV central station and we just need to give that PM54 a name. Now, this name is going to be the name for the PM54. We'll name the NVR or the device we're connecting to a little later in the process. So we'll give that one a name. Now here on the final tab for activation of the PM54, you'll see we've got this account number box. Now with the account number, if you're monitoring this site or these devices with a central station, you do need to add the account number that has been provided by your central station. If you are monitoring internally, then this just becomes purely a reference number. So typically we suggest using the last 4 digits of the serial number as it's only a reference. or any numbering system that's not going to interfere with your other devices. So once we've clicked activate, that PM54 is now going to go out, register on the Telstra network, and it should be ready for you to connect to and communicate with. To add the Check My CCTV service to a site, we then go into the exclamation mark here on the left and ping to get into our menus. And then all of our programming is done under the IP tab. So this will look familiar. Thomas has been through a bit of this briefly with you earlier. As he said, with your data plans, you can see what your current usage is for your data plan. You can adjust those plans if need be, increasing the plan, doing a top up, whatever suits that site. Now, with the Check My CCTV service, for 9 out of 10 sites, a 1 gig plan is going to be all you'll need for monitoring. It allows you a little bit of connectivity for checking footage or doing some configuration changes. Check My CCTV uses fairly minimal data. It does do an image check twice a day, which is a single frame from each camera to compare for image integrity, pixel change, brightness and focus. So that does use a little bit of data, but we're talking most systems have good enough compression that each of those files is in the kilobytes. So we might be talking 10 or 15 kilobytes per image. So a 1 gig plan typically is fine. If you are going to be using that data pack for extracting footage as well, you may want to consider a little bit larger data pack as that will get chewed up. Another important note, so the LAN tab here, this is where we set the IP address for the PM54. Now, this static IP in the PM54 is important because that is what we set as the gateway in your NVR or VMS server to be able to connect to the internet with that device. So you do need to make sure that this IP address is on the same subnet as your NVRs or servers, and that you've entered that as the gateway for that device. Now, another way to do that is to enable DHCP on the PM54. Allow your device to obtain all of the networking information, and then do make sure that you turn off DHCP in your device once you've obtained those IPs. If you don't, if that NVR reboots, there's a good chance its IP address will change and you're going to lose connectivity to that device. So you can either do it statically and manually, or you can enable DHCP, allow your devices to collect that IP and then lock it in once you've done that. Now, after each time you make a change to the PM54, you do need to make sure that you hit save on that tab. And once you hit save, you're going to see this bar pop up here asking you to restart network. Now, what that does is that actually locks those settings in. So it is important that after saving any changes to the PM54, you do go ahead and hit restart network on that device. That's just going to quickly lock those settings into the hardware, and now we're good to go again. Quick note on the Wi-Fi access point, very handy little tool to have activated for technicians. It means that you can go to site and whatever devices you've got running on the PM54, you can connect to them without the need for a patch cable, trying to find spare ports on a switch in the client's network. You can rock up with your laptop, connect straight to the Wi-Fi, make your programming changes, do anything you need through that wireless access point, and then off you go back on the road. The port forwarding, as Thomas mentioned before, this is where we go to actually add any port forwards that we need for additional devices. Any of the devices that you connect to with Check My CCTV, those port forwards are actually entered when we configure the Check My CCTV side of things. So these port forwards are added automatically. Any other devices that you're connecting to, like an access control panel or other devices on site, we just go to that add button on the right, and we can add additional port forwards to that PM54. If you are monitoring multiple CCTV systems on a single site with one PM54, then you can do that with Check My CCTV as well. The first device will be added automatically when we activate Check My CCTV, and any additional NVRs just need that manual port forward done so that we can add those as well. Now, the final step to adding a site with Check My CCTV is to enable the Check My CCTV service. Now, as we're going through this process, guys, if you do have any questions, please do shoot them through. We'd love to answer those as we go along or at the end of the session. So anything that pops up as we're going through, please do ask, and we'll be more than happy to run through that as we go. So we've enabled the Check My CCTV service. The details that we enter here affects how that information is populated into the Check My CCTV software. So if we add a customer name, if that customer has multiple sites, then if you continue to add the same customer name, those sites will automatically drop into the site tree on the left in the correct categories. So make a note of how you're naming and entering this information. And if a customer does have multiple sites, just enter that same information and it'll sort it all out nice and organized on the tree for you, which we'll have a look at very shortly. So we enter our customer name, our unit name for the NVR, and if we like, we can add a site name as well. So all this does is add an extra tier in the tree as our sites break down in Check My CCTV. Again, if you want to be able to break those customers down into regions or states, that type of thing, you can do that by adding a site category here. So we select our manufacturer from the drop-down list here. So as you can see, we do support quite a large variety of systems, and as we go along, like I said, we like to add new brands whenever we can. So any new systems that you'd like to see if we can work with, we're happy to work with those manufacturers to try and add those. Enter the IP address of the NVR or VMS server on site, and we can test that by clicking our little monitor symbol there and doing a ping on that device. So we can see here, we've got a good ping response. So that site is ready to go. Now, the login information, this is the only other item that we need to be able to connect to that device. So you'll see there is 2 login boxes. Some of the much older systems did have separate logins for the web interface versus the software interface. Check My CCTV uses both interfaces to communicate with the devices to collect all of the information. So we do need to just pop that information in. Usually it's going to be the same login for both. It's only some of the much older systems, like I said, with dedicated Micros, some of those where you may need to add separate logins for the 2 categories. Now, the 2 ports we've got here, when you go to add your first PM54 with Check My CCTV, there is some default ports entered in these boxes. You can change those to whatever you like. Now, you do need to make sure that those ports are what is configured in the NVR for the device to be able to connect to. Once we hit save, as we said before, we just need to make sure we remember that restart network. That's going to lock those settings in. And the final step here is to download the import file. Now what this does is this takes the config information we've just entered, pops it into a little import file ready for us to drop into Check My CCTV, add that site and start monitoring. Sorry. Now all we need to do, download that to a location that you're familiar with so you can find it again. And then we're ready to head over to Check My CCTV. So here is our global interface. Now this is where we get the overview of all of our sites that we can monitor as we're going along. We have a map integration here with Google Maps, and that populates as soon as there is a site that actually has a fault. So when a fault occurs, that map will populate and zoom into the location of that site and pop a little yellow or red dropper there for you, depending on what type of alert has actually occurred. Now, to add a new site, we head straight up to File and Import Unit List from CSV. That should take us to our download location. We click the import file that we want to add, and that's going to drop that straight into that tree. So, okay. So you'll see here it's added that new line for Viasec. Now, as we drop down, the first time that the system tries to communicate with a PM54, you'll see the blue circle here with the question mark in it. Now that will either switch to a grey circle with a key, as you can see here, which means it's ready to license, or if it's failed, you'll see a grey circle with a cross in it. Now that means you need to go back and check some of your network settings or some of the connectivity to that device. Obviously, the cross there means that we're not able to communicate with that device. If we receive the grey circle with a key symbol, we're ready to license that unit. We right-click on that particular device. And down the bottom of our list here, license unit. That applies one of your Check My CCTV licenses. And it's now going to go out and try and collect that information for the first time. Now, typically that's going to take between 20 and 30 seconds to start to populate that information. If it does take significantly longer. It may just be a bit of lag on the network. Give it a chance to pull that info through. And if it starts to pull the info through but isn't displaying all of it initially, we can actually do a refresh to pull the rest of that info in if it's being a bit slow. Now you'll see here, we've started to pull through the camera statuses for that particular NVR. We can see it's already given us an alert saying that cameras 4 to 8 have failed. Now it's still processing some of that info in the back, or there may be an item that is taking its time coming through. So we can actually do a refresh to populate the rest of the information that we've already collected. So here at global sites at the top left, we can right click and just refresh. Now if we head back down to that device again, we're going to see the rest of the information has been pushed through to populate. So we've got our network status check, so it's polling that device constantly to make sure that it's online and responding through the ports that we've set. It's monitoring the disk access to make sure the drives are accessible, and also monitoring that there is recording being done to those drives. So it's not just whether or not the drives are online, it will actually monitor to make sure there is recording being done to those drives. Date and time accuracy, so we can see this system's only about 5 seconds out on its time, so that's fine. We're receiving 36 days of recording, and the last restart of that unit was back on the 23rd of the 9th, so no issues there. Now, a couple of items you do need to set up the first time you add a new device. If you would like to utilize the image check function, we need to come across to the image check tab, click on that tab, and under camera settings, we need to enable image check for these particular cameras. So it's as simple as dropping down the camera list. If you're only enabling image check on a couple of cameras, you can do them individually, or scroll all the way to the bottom and click all. Now, if you're on a large NVR, like a 64 or 128 channel NVR, there is that all option there. So if you don't see it immediately, do scroll down because it's a lot of clicking to do them one by one. So you do have that all option there just to enable it on all cameras. And if they're unused at the time, that's fine. It's not going to monitor them. And as you add those cameras down the line, then the image check will be already ready to function for those. So we tick the box next to all. So our 3 checks that we're performing, the pixel difference, the alignment difference, brightness and focus. Now, I do tend to recommend changing to the reference image for image check. What this allows you to do is detect a slow degradation on your cameras much more effectively. If you're comparing the image to just the previous day, you will pick up significant changes in that image, but the slow degradation, where you may have cobweb buildup or dust and grime, that's not going to be detected as a large percentage difference in pixels because it's a much smaller change from day to day. But if we're always comparing back to that reference image when you first activated the service, all the cameras were clean and aimed in as they should be, then we're going to detect that degradation a lot better. So we just save that one. Okay, changes are saved. And we're ready to go. Now, the image check is done on a schedule. So that will go out over the next 24 hours and collect the first 2 snapshots for that particular system. And it's going to have those ready for you to see that data after the first 24 hours. So you won't see that immediately when you activate it. It is set on a schedule that you'll find under our global config. Now, just a quick example so you can see what image check is doing. So you can see here, we're getting those 2 snapshots. Between those 2 images, we're getting around 11% pixel change, 50% brightness is the level we're sitting at, so that's great. And we're sitting at 25 on our scale for focus. So all of these key items are helping you monitor those systems 24/7, not only to make sure they're working, but to make sure that they're working as they should be. So it allows you to keep track of exactly what's happening on those sites. Now, the PM54 is a great deployment tool. It allows you to connect to these systems much more easily and quickly without having to negotiate with IT guys on having those port forwards done or addresses you can connect to, modifying firewalls. You've got all of that control within the Atlas portal. So even though you can monitor sites on any form of network connection, the PM54 is a great deployment tool for rapid deployment. Your tech can go to site, plug in the NVR, plug in the PM54, program it in 5 minutes, and you can be online with Check My CCTV. Now, A lot of the other features of Check My CCTV we do cover in a technical walkthrough webinar, so I will leave it at that for now with Check My CCTV. We'd be more than happy to have you join us for one of our overview sessions and technical walkthroughs. There is a lot to see about Check My CCTV and what it offers, but for today's session, to configure a new site, that's all it takes. A few simple settings within the PM54 and porting that import file over into the Check My CCTV application. So what I might do now, I might pass back over to Thomas so we can go through any questions that you might have. Please do keep pushing those questions through now if you have the chance, or if there's anything you'd like to ask, and we'd be more than happy to cover those now. So Thomas, I might hand back over to you.
Thanks, Luke. That was really good. So let's look at these questions. Provision of ISR CCTV. Not totally sure on that one. Luke, have you had any experience?
ISR, sorry, is this a brand of CCTV?
That's my assumption.
Okay. If you could shoot us through an email with a bit more specific information. If it's not on our compatibility sheet, as I said, if there is a brand there that you'd like us to have a look at, I think, is it ISR Provision? If that's what you're referring to, then there is a few brands that we're looking at the moment, and we have effectively a wish list with our developers. So we're constantly working through that. There is a couple of brands that we've taken a look at in just the last few weeks. And we're constantly adding to that. So as we update our compatibility sheet, we will pass that on to the team at Permaconn so they can get that out to you. So, and we'll also make announcements on platforms like LinkedIn, those sorts of things to let you know when there is new brands added and new support available there.
Beautiful. Next question. Can the PM54 be connected to the router? The NVR is connected for this connection instead of directly to the NVR. So from what I understand, that it's you're not connecting. You can't connect directly to the NVR. You want to connect to the customer's overall network. So yes, you can connect to a switch and work and hunt down the NVR through the switch. That'll just take you changing some of your LAN settings. And we would recommend though that you don't have the DHCP on to that, because we have seen once or twice in the past that the PM54 has overridden as the primary gateway. So I would just have that off so you don't have all the traffic flow going to the PM54 and burning it out. We would recommend having the VPN on there, because as we've seen in a last update, I'll quickly maybe share my screen.
Just while you're doing that, Thomas, if you're asking whether you can connect the PM54 to the existing router to save on data, yes, there is a WAN port on the PM54. So what you can do with services like P2P is you can actually have the WAN port of the PM54 connected to your router on site. And that allows us a remote connection for monitoring to come in through the PM54, but it also allows the P2P streaming going out to phones and those types of devices to go outbound via the existing router on site. So that will allow you to have a smaller data pack on the PM54, utilize the existing network for the streaming, but for the remote connectivity side, you're using that PM54 so that the client's router doesn't need firewall rules and port forwarding. So that's another way that you can connect the 54 to the client's router. But in that configuration, you would have the NVR going into a LAN port on the PM54, and then you would have the WAN port of the 54 going into the client's router. I do believe we've got a document on how to use that configuration, which we can probably follow up with you after the webinar to provide that if you need it.
Yep, thanks, Luke. And I will say, we did a previous webinar. I did show a bit of this on the last one, but as you see here, if there is a traffic concern about data usage and other things, inside our VPN, we do have a restrict traffic box. So with that restrict traffic box, only paired devices to the VPN will be any outgoing or ingoing traffic to stop any unauthorized data usage, whether someone's trying to connect to the PM54 or you want to screen out. I know Microsoft's a fiend for auto updates, so we can streamline that so those auto updates don't drop inside the VPN. save you money on data packs. Next question, can you use this internet feature with alarm panel programming and access control? Yes, you can. We actually had a webinar about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, which covered how to connect to various alarm panels through various modes of the PM54. We do have a case study that we have released where Fairfield Council is using the PM54 to federate multiple TCOM sites into the C4 management software. So yeah, you upload, download, and even if you're using things like C4 or ICT's Armor IP, you can do that connection as well as have that flexibility to put your cameras on top. So completely isolating your security network and having that secure, encrypted communications pathway.
Just on that, with the previous webinars that Thomas is mentioning there, so the same with the one that they've done on the alarm devices and also the Check My CCTV overview and technical walkthrough, they are available at Permaconn's YouTube channel as well. So if you're unable to get onto the ongoing webinars that we're providing, there is recorded versions of those on the Permacon YouTube channel if you'd like to have a look at those.
Yep, and just go to YouTube and just type in Permacon and it's right there. Last question, what is the price on the PM54? I would, for that one, I would suggest you just give us a ring directly, and we can provide pricing over the phone. Generally, our trade price is 185 ex GST. But yeah, like I said, please feel free to call us directly and to discuss that. No worries, that was last of the current questions. Thank you again for attending the webinar. Hopefully we'll see you again soon, or not too soon. And thank you, Luke, for having a chat with us today.
No problem at all.
All right, so I hope everyone has a good day and stay safe out there. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.